Hi, this is Sarah Miller giving you a recap of the part writing for level 5 that I did on November 3rd. The recording did not happen that day, so I am covering everything one more time. And I will share screen with you right off the bat. So first off, rules for part writing, 3-voice part writing. The soprano and the bass will be given for the students already. And now the rules for the students to consider is that the alto and soprano have to be within an octave of each other. This is all in the workbook. Resolve leading tones go up. Chordal sevenths go down. They are called tendency tones because they tend to do this. Also avoid parallel unisons, fifths, and octaves. And each chord must have a root and a third, except there are two exceptions. One is that at the end, all of the voices may end on the root. So all roots. And if you have 7/5 voicing, which I will show you, you will not have a third because you'll have the seventh and the fifth above the bass. And when you have those two, we only are adding two voices above the bass, so we won't have the third. Now, you may omit the fifth if it creates smoother voice leading. Now, these are the rules exactly as they are in the book. There are a couple things I would like to remind you to remind your students because I see these errors happening a lot. The first one is to explain what alto means. The alto voice is a lower voice than the soprano, so they should not be writing alto notes above the soprano. I have seen this many times. The other thing is that the alto notes, the stems must go down. And if the alto ends on the same note as the soprano, if it's a whole note, you write an extra whole note next to the first one. If it's a note with a stem, then you have the stem going down as well as up. Now, the way that these are graded, you get have a point off for every 2 missed things. So if they miss one thing, but they get those stems right at the end, then they end up with no points lost. But if they miss one thing and then forget that stem at the end, then they lose a point. So it's just a thing to remind them. And one other thing is that if there is a sharp in the figures, they must put that sharp into the music next to the note it refers to, which of course is the third of the chord. Okay, now the next thing we are going to do, stop that share and go to a new share, is to go over the error. And this is a page from the book where we have 10 examples. Some of them have errors, some of them do not. So in number 1, we are assuming we are in the key of C. And in the key of C, the leading tone is B, and this chordal seventh here on this G chord is F. Now we don't have the figures here, but anyway, we're looking for that B here to resolve up by step because that is the leading tone, which I will draw in for you. And we are looking for this chordal seventh to go down. So if this example had had figures, what it would have had is 7, 3. Now the chordal sevenths are always easy to spot in the figures because there must be a seventh in the figures for us to have a seventh. The leading tone can be trickier to find, so I recommend that at the top of whatever example the students are doing, they write leading tone equals, and in this case it is B, okay? Then they won't miss it. It's easier to spot the leading tone when you are in minor because it must have an accidental. So now I look at number 2 and the leading tone does go up and this chordal seventh does go down. It's the very same pitches, but these voices are too far apart. That's way further than an octave. Plus, these notes are really, really high to sing. So there's a spacing issue plus a range issue in this one. Now, number 3, I'm looking at the leading tone, which is not going up. Oops, so that is wrong. The chordal 7th goes down, but the leading tone is not resolved. In number 4, the leading tone, the B, is going up, but the chordal 7th is not going down. So that's the error in that one. And this final one, now here are the stems going up and down, as I said you need to do at the end of an example if everybody's ending on the same note. However, this is parallel unisons because both the soprano and the alto are singing the same notes. So that's why this one is incorrect. Now, the examples here, 6 through 10, basically the same chords. There's a bunch of things in number 6. First off, the G up to the D is a fifth, and it's okay to have a fifth between the bass and the soprano. It's just that then the very next chord also has that same fifth between the bass and the soprano. And moreover, the voices are going the same direction. That's what we mean by parallel fifths. If this D here in the soprano, in fact, if we rewrote this as D here and B here, we'd be in better shape because the going up the fourth and going down the fifth would be fine. We would still have some other errors, however, because, and I'm going to get rid of this thing that I just drew. Here, the soprano is jumping to a note that is lower than the note the alto just sang. That is called overlap, and that is not okay. So there's more than one bad thing going on here. Plus, it's just poor voice leading because all of the voices are going the same direction, leaping. I'm typing that so you can see. And that makes it very hard to sing. So these rules come from a practice of trying to make things easier to do. So you need some contrary motion to make things easy, or at least oblique. An oblique motion is when one voice stays on the same note while the other ones move. Okay, number 7, the brackets here, G to G, that's 8, and C to C, that's 8. So this is an example of parallel perfect octaves. Now, if the alto had instead gone to F and the soprano had gone to C, as it does, that's fine because it's not an octave within the same voice. Because what we're talking about with parallel octaves, it means that the interval between one voice and another then is the same interval as between those two voices in the next part. The reason that we have this rule is that there's an implication in 4-part writing or 3-part writing of counterpoint. And when you have parallel octaves, they sound like they are the same thing. So we don't have separate voices. So that's why we avoid that. Now in number 7, at least the leading tone does resolve up. Where if you look at number 6, you see this leading tone in the alto, does not go up. In fact, it goes down a fifth. That would be really awful to sing. Now, number 8, G, B, D, I see all of the notes of the chord. The B goes up to C, that's the leading tone. That looks correct. And the D can go down to C. I see nothing wrong with this one. And look, it says example 8 has good voice leading. So there we are. Now I look at this one, G, D, F. So this is that example of 7-5, where the third can be omitted and it sounds fine. Now the 7th is this note. Does it resolve down by step? Yes, it does. So that is good. And this one will sound just fine. The only thing I personally don't like about it is that we are approaching the octave in the outer voices by similar motion, and the bass is jumping. When the bass is jumping, it's sort of okay, but if it were in the soprano, it would be an error called hidden octaves, which means it's not parallel octaves, but you are jumping to an octave. Now this last one, G, G, B, it has left out the fifth. As you know, leaving out the fifth is okay. This is the leading tone. It is going up. And we have two G's and a B. We have no fifth, as I said, that's fine. We have one going up, one going down, this one going down to the octave. See, this is so much nicer because you're approaching the octave from contrary motion. So now that is the errors. Now I'm going to show you later on in this example, or in the workbook, because this is literally the workbook, what's new in level 5. Now, do you see this row of things to complete at the bottom? This was not used in the old level 5, but the level 5 now that we are using here, the fall of 22 and going forward, we are requiring that the students identify what key the piece is in and do the Roman numeral analysis. And the Roman numeral analysis includes things such as the cadential 6/4 chord, and here's one right here, the 6/4 going to the 5/3, and what the student would draw here, they would draw 1 5, and then they would put 6/4 dash 5/3. So we only need one blank for that. We need a big blank though, because you got to put all of this in. And the thing that often confuses people about this is that they see the 6/4 and they think, oh, it must be the 5 chord in second inversion. But what this is indicating is that the first chord, the 6/4 chord, is the cadential 6/4 chord. And some of you may prefer to write cadential 6/4. That's okay because it is indicating the function of that chord. But this way here is what's more commonly used in colleges these days with functional harmony. So the 6 and a 4 are literally the 6th and the 4th above the 5th note that then resolve down to the 5th and the 3rd. So I'm hoping that makes sense to you. That's what they would write there. Now, there is also, for example, here, there's another 6/4 chord. And this one, we would not put a Roman numeral at all. This is the one where the bass stays the same and we go up to notes and then we come back down. And this is called the neighbor 6/4, and it's just an N in the analysis. James Chenova will be talking about this coming week. So if you need to know more about that, you can find out. Now here is yet another 6/4 chord here. This one, we're going from the 1 chord to the 1/6, and the students are not required to write the figures because they are right above here, but I always think it can be helpful to understand how the passing chord works. What it works as is a passing chord between a root position chord and a first inversion chord. And the root position has no figures and the first inversion has the 6. Now this is an exceptional example because it includes all 3 of the most commonly used 6/4 chords in this chorale type writing. So here again is the one where the student would write just the Roman numeral 5 and then 6/4. We don't have the 7th here, so just 6-4 and then 5-3. And most often, what composers do, the reason we use the dashes is that the note that is a 6th above or a 4th above does go to that next note. So here, this note in the soprano is the fourth above, and it goes directly to the third. So it implies the voice leading. So then the sixth above, which would be F, that would be in the alto. I have to erase this so I'd have room for it. Would be here, stem down, you see, and then here, going down. Okay, so there's that. Now we are going to do one quick practice example. So I've put this into the part writing for level 5. Now, what I recommend for the students before they start is that they write things like leading tone equals, and here you look at the last note to determine what key you're in. We are in the key of G minor, so the leading tone is the F sharp. As I've said before, it's most important to note this when you are in a major key, but I thought it would be helpful to be in a minor key. And I will leave that there. Okay, so we start off with a 5-3, and the fifth above G is D, and the third above G is B flat. They do not have to appear that the fifth is over the third when we put these numbers down here. They can appear in whatever order works out, just so you know. Now the next one is a 6-3, and they can, of course, right underneath, okay, the sixth above is G, and the third above is D, and the D is already there, correct? So we need G right there. Then look at this, we're coming back to the first chord. So I don't really even have to think about this one so much. I can just go back to it. Does that make sense? I hope. Now the next chord is a 6-3 again. The sixth above F sharp is D. The third above F sharp is A. And the note we are missing is the A. So I'm going to put A right here. And so far, this looks pretty nice, doesn't it? And we do have two voices going down, but it's the 3 going to the 3. So that is perfectly fine. The next chord is once again the first chord. And we have to have that B flat because it's the third of the chord. You always must have the third of the chord. Okay. Now the next chord, this is a new chord. So 6-3 above E flat, the sixth is C, and the third is G. So here we need to put in G. Okay. Now the next chord, this is yet another new one. Oh, right, I need to write this in. It says sharp and 7. The seventh is the C that we already have. The sharp is, of course, F sharp, our leading tone that we noted at the top of the page, right? So then, and getting to F sharp from G is easy to do because it's a half step, okay? Now, and you notice I had to put the sharp on. That's a thing not to forget. Remind your students. You notice also I have not put any notes over the soprano because the definition of alto is the voice that is lower than the soprano that also reads on the treble clef. Okay, very important to make that note. Now, we get to, once again, the G chord, right? But it's going to be different voicing, and we need D, which is a fifth above the G, and we need our B flat in this case, right? So we have the B flat already. We need the D, but we also need the F sharp to resolve up to G if we can. The half note here implies that this is a resting point along the way. So it's possible we could just go to the D here. And what I think is a good way to think about this, because I noticed that my next note is G in the soprano. It'll make this chord's going to be a little tricky, just saying. Now I could have a G here as well, right? I should first tell you what notes are in this one, as I always do. This is another G chord. So we need the G, we've got it. And then there's the D. Now remind your students that when it's in first inversion in this way, the root of the chord is the sixth above the bass. So here the root is all of these sixes as it is here. Okay. So that's the note they can't leave out. We could leave out the D. We could stay on G if we wanted to. I'm going to hold that thought and figure out what's going to be happening here. All of these notes are going to move up one, right? Because this note moves up one. So G would go to A, as it does, and D would go to E flat. So we have the A. We'd probably like the E flat, wouldn't we? We don't have to have it, but here it's going to sound kind of nice, I do believe. And that makes me think that here I actually would like the D as opposed to the G. But I could have the G. There's not just one answer, right? The D I do not have to have. And we are allowed a unison every so often, okay? And then let's look at notes here. 7 and sharp. A seventh above D is C. So this will be our D7 chord. And the sharp, of course, refers to the note a third above. If there's just a sharp, it's a third above. And that is, once again, our leading tone of F sharp, which is the note we don't have to write because it's already in the soprano. We must have the C because the seventh is indicated. We can't just say, well, I'm going to do another D. Now, do you remember which way sevenths have to go? So we have our chordal seventh here, and chordal sevenths resolve down by step. So the C needs to go to B flat. And it should also be, sorry, my music moved. I think I moved too far. There we go. Something like that. We have the third, we have the eighth. So G up to G, that's the octave. It may be a double octave in this case, but that's just fine. We consider those just fine. And then the third is the B flat because the chordal seventh is resolving down by step. Now I hope that that helps all of you. One other suggestion that I had for people, and I will show you this, is to, let's make sure I'm doing the right thing. This one, okay. If you are in a key, since they're doing Roman numerals, when they first start doing Roman numerals, it can be very helpful to write at the top what each of the chords is made up of. So the one chord is in this key, which is B flat major, is B flat, D, F. The two chord, we can write them all if we want, is C, E flat, G. The three chord, which we don't expect a whole lot in this level, but we might have it, is a major chord, D, three chord, B flat. No, it's a minor chord. We're in minor, a major, I'm sorry. I was somehow thinking we were in minor. My apologies. Okay, the four chord is E flat major. The five chord, and I always add the seventh just so I know, is F, A, C, E flat. The sixth chord, minor in the major key, is G, B flat, D, and the seven chord, which is diminished, I don't have a diminished sign, so I use the asterisk, is A, A, C, E flat. Now, if they have all of this written at the top, then they can look at the notes that they have that they're going to be writing down to figure out what Roman numeral they have. They should, of course, immediately look for any 6/4 chords, which I don't see any here. The only interesting thing here I see is we have an inversion of a seventh chord. But let's see, I'm going to clear those and go down here. Here we have a 6/4 chord, right? So when you see those, they can immediately look at them and go, what kind is this 6/4 chord? And I look at it and go, oh, there's a neighbor. And you can have them just do this for their whole thing. And I'm sorry about my extra red circle there. So here we have a 6/4 chord and we have a 6/4 chord. The first one, this one with the sharp, this is a passing from a root position to a first inversion. The other one is a cadential 6/4. The bass changes by an octave, but that does not affect anything. This one has yet another passing, neighbor 6/4, sorry. This one has a cadential 6/4. This one, it already says passing, doesn't it? Here, we also have a passing 6/4. And that's all of our 6/4s in that example. Here, when you see it, the third chord from the end, it's almost always a cadential 6/4, almost. Here we have one where the bass stays the same. That's always the neighbor 6/4. And I see no 6/4 chords in this one. Very fun. Here's another one, third chord from the end, cadential 6/4. Okay, that's my discussion of part writing for level 5, the new edition. And let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.